Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so delighted to introduce today's guest, Gustavo Razzetti. Gustavo is a sought-after speaker and workplace culture consultant. He created Fearless Culture to help organizations become purpose-driven, agile, and innovative. Gustavo is also the creator of the Culture Design Canvas, a culture mapping tool used by consultants and organizations worldwide. He is the author of Remote, Not Distant, a book that provides a roadmap to thrive in a hybrid workplace. Please join me in welcoming Gustavo Razzetti. Welcome, Gustavo.
Thank you, Tammy. Very excited to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
I am so happy to have you here. I love talking to people about their early years, their origin stories, and about workplace culture. So there's so many places for us to go. But take us back to the early years. Tell us about your formative years and how those may have or may not informed where you are today.
Absolutely. Maybe I'm going to go back into the future. And when I was a kid, I was raised in a house where we are 7 siblings, and I was number 5, where I'm number 5. It was very important because I wasn't the first one who are the ones who need to make all the inroads and challenge your parents, but also I'm not in the bottom, which are the ones that are more spoiled, so to speak. So in my case, one thing that really shaped me and that affected also my career and everything I did in life is freedom. So I was in a position where my parents travel or whatever, and I had to cook for myself and sometimes even for my younger siblings. So I love cooking, by the way. I learned how to was really young. And I'm talking about the real thing, not the microwave kind of stuff. I learned to cook everything, like different type of cuisine, from French, Italian, Vietnamese, Thai, Korean, Japanese, Spanish, you name it. And I think that I applied the idea of freedom on one hand, but also the curiosity to experiment with different ingredients. Whatever you have to make something out of it and make sure it's tasty, it's worth it, and it's interesting for people. And that same spirit basically drove me to first turn the marketing advertising space, exploring new things, looking for new ideas, looking for new solutions, challenge the status quo. And through time, the same appeal basically drove me into the culture design space.
Wow. So just for the sake of our audience's knowledge, so I'm going to take you back to those days when you started cooking and the freedom and the independence. Was that, I know you're from Argentina originally. Was that back in Argentina when you started cooking as a kid and cooking for your siblings?
Yeah. I first started cooking for myself, and then they say, well, now that you are doing it all right, do you mind we're taking a 5-day trip with some of your brothers. Can you take care of the rest? Yeah, sure.
I see. And so it was out of necessity, but you really enjoyed it.
Yeah, but also in Argentina, grilling is a thing, doing like a charcoal, the real grill with lots of different ingredients and stuff. 7-8-year-olds old, and basically we had a weekend small place, and we had people visiting, and I was cooking for 30 adults, all of my own, because I really enjoy it. So
oh wow! So really, it just very naturally came from you. Exactly. So that sounds like fun. I like to cook too, so I think that's probably why it sounds like fun to me.
I knew.
And so all these different cuisines that you've cooked over the years, was that something you learned on your own, or did you get any formal training or take classes, or just develop it over time?
Both. I think that kind of my approach to learning first, I try my own like intuition, and then I go deeper into the technical side and experiment. Some people start studying and then the practice. I start doing things, and if I like it, then I study to become better.
Oh, wow.
I had I because of my career, I traveled to many countries across the world. So I experimented with different types of food and then say, well, I'm going to try to recreate that technique and that stuff. And then once one of my friends was working, like producing different TV show for a chef, and he did say, hey, you always like to cook. Do you mind going there like during the weekends just to have like an internship? It was not even a paid job. And I was able to join a very well-known chef cooking on his basically restaurant, and it was fun because one day he had to go to a wedding and he left. He had a sous chef and formally trained people, and then it was me. But also he said, hey, you know what? You're going to take care of all the appetizers, which was a very complicated French restaurant. I say, hey, you do it. I say, I was stuck because, well, it was a challenge, but on the other hand, I say, well, it's his name that's on the restaurant, not me.
That's right.
For me, that sense was really liberating. So I'm very good at taking those challenges and say, hey, let's do it.
I love it. So, and that was something you threw yourself into while you were also working in the field of marketing and advertising.
Absolutely. That was my weekend hobby.
Wonderful. So I'm curious. So at a young age, you got interested in cooking, and sounds like you really were developing that. And then you ended up in marketing and advertising. Was that something you studied in school?
Yeah. I went to college and studied marketing and advertising, but then I focus less on the creative side, more on the planning, the strategy area. I work with creatives a lot. And basically my job was to uncover insights from people in order to see what are the things that drive them and how to connect with them. So I started studying psychology. I studied psychoanalysis. I studied social psychology. I went to different places, studying people that were completely off charts, outliers, and tried to study them and participate in different. So that was something that then drove me to the passion for human psychology and human behavior that, of course, I applied to marketing and innovation later. And then when I decided to move into the culture space, that was kind of a result of, I observed that companies had more ideas and innovation and solutions that they need, but usually most of them don't see the light of day. They get killed because of fear. They get killed because of lack of a conducive culture, and say, well, I think I can make a bigger difference. So I leverage all the process of human-centered design that I was applying to innovation, but also all my psychology studies into the culture design field.
Wow. So over what period of time did you started in marketing, and then you got more curious about psychology. Over what period of time did you sort of translate your curiosity and then your studies in psychology into working with organizations around their culture?
There are two. One is the formal answer, and I say the informal, because like everything when it comes to career, you talk about work from the inside out.
Yeah.
They're complex animals, and even though we tell the story like, I switched from this to that, actually the changes are more like the liminal phase in which we are moving from one state to another. It's a lot of confusion. We realize, hey, now I made the switch. So in my case, it was more like a natural transition. First, my clients starting to ask me, hey, thank you for this, but I'm having issues with my team. So they started, because they trusted me, they started asking me for support, an area that wasn't necessarily what they were paying us for, but they thought, hey, this guy kind of gets it, or at least I trust him, so I'm going to. So it was more of a natural realization. I say, well, why are they reaching out to me for this? with their teams, with their leaders, with their culture. So at some point I said, well, maybe there's an opportunity there. So I went to Stanford and I participated in a program. It was all about change leadership. And that basically helped me like put all my ideas together and realize, hey, I was working with a team from Bank of America, another team from Google, helping them like redesign their culture, how to become more innovative, how to become more agile. And I realized, well, this is basically the opportunity for me to bring together all the things that I've been practicing and learning throughout my career. So
yeah, no, it's a cumulative, right? And it sounds like you were teaching them how to, or working with them or consulting with them on the how to, but it sounds like a big piece of the how to really tied in with the human dynamic around that. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, everything that when people say that we're struggling, like adopting either a new process or new ideas or new technology, it's all about human aspects.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, for example, when companies are changing direction, they need to readjust, recalibrate their culture. And for example, change always it's associated to a loss. For some people, it's a loss of identity because, for example, there's a merger and I'm associated, I have the brand logo here that I've been working for this, let's say IBM for 10 years, and now they're going to change the name and people feel like their own identity gets redefined. New leadership comes to town and they try to change how the company operates exactly the same. They feel, I feel that I have a loss of adequacy. Basically, I used to be very good at doing something this way, and now that I have to change the how, to your point, then people feel, or I'm not good enough, or maybe they are not accepting my best model, best practice. So there's a lot of emotions that come to play in those transitions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious about your own process. It sounds like, a lot of this happened very almost like in an evolutionary way or organically that, for example, you said, people started asking you about team culture or how to motivate or how to move people in a certain direction. And you very naturally had ideas about how to advise people along those lines. And you had also started studying psychology. And then you went to Stanford and studied change leadership. And so you had both, almost like the cooking, right? You had been thinking about these things or doing some of these things, and then you built some of the more formal education around it as well. And clearly it just felt like the right thing. It sounds like you were like, oh, they're asking about these things. Well, I think I'll learn more about that. Or did you really think about it, or did you just kind of step into these things because they interested you or because people were asking you for them? I'm sort of curious about what your internal process was in contrast to that people were asking you for certain things.
Absolutely. I think there's always like a system. There's a collection of different elements that come to play.
Yeah.
Same as cooking, it's about us. We have all these ingredients and we need to see what are we going to do about it. So I was getting requests and I felt, okay, if I can be of help to my clients, I'm going to do that. Then there was a passion. There was also frustration because I was feeling that my career wasn't challenging enough. I was successful. I mean, I had different jobs. They moved me from one city to another. I was doing great from the outset, but from the inside out, I wasn't happy. I was feeling like I need like a different challenge. I don't think I'm leveraging my full potential. Frustration is always a driver for me. Those things that basically frustration. First, we get stuck. Then it opens up ourselves to curiosity, and then we start experimenting. And then at some point we say, what if? And then I connect all the dots and I cook my career, my new step in the career.
So you started to notice you weren't feeling challenged enough because clients were asking you for more, yet you were not really charged with doing more?
I was feeling that the career space in which I was no longer meaningful to me.
Ah, okay.
That regards, I was feeling kind of frustrated,
Ah,
and then when I realized, hey, I'm finding that I'm becoming more and more passionate helping people with the culture element, with the leadership element, then I decided to refocus on.
and the space that you were in at the time that was starting to, let's say, become less challenging for you, what space were you in?
I was working at a large marketing agency here in Chicago. It was a
Oh, okay. All right. And you're in Chicago now.
yeah,
So you were in a marketing agency and there were certain things that you were supposed to be doing as a part of that. And it sounds like you were being drawn to other things.
absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing that happens with business, I mean, the business I was in, it was all about delivering results, grow the business. So it was all very mechanic, so to speak, and
Sure.
passionate enough for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and in a way that's sort of where you began, right? You said that when you started your career in marketing or your studies in marketing, you started with more of the sort of data-driven or tactical side of it. So it sounds like you really grew. I don't want to say grew beyond it because there's many different ways to grow in a marketing career, right? So so you left the marketing agency, and where did you go from there once you recognized the level of frustration you were feeling?
that's when I started my own consulting firm, like 5.5 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. That sounds exciting. Was it just exciting, or was it a little daunting, or what how did you make that decision to go off on your own at that point?
I think that my reaction when I'm facing those frustration moments, I always say, like, instead of blaming the context or the other people, I look inside and say, well, frustration is about me. So what I'm going to do about it? I accept things as they are, or I'm gonna have to change them, and that's why I decided to start my own business.
Mm-hmm.
And it was daunting. It was exciting. It was difficult at especially the first 2 years. And
Yeah.
first, because I had to reposition myself. So all the business contacts I had, all the things my network wasn't necessarily a good fit for what I was planning to do, but also I need to build my reputation. Some people, because they associated to, you're good at this, then when you're trying to do something completely different, they say, well, show us that you can do it, no?
Right.
So it took a time to prove people that I can do other stuff as well.
So how did you go about doing that? What are some of the things that you did to translate the things that you knew you could do, but that you weren't necessarily known for? Because I think our audience here would benefit greatly to hear about that. There's a lot of people out there who know that they are meant to do something else or some variation, right? And yet they don't always know, how do I go about taking what I already know or can do and really put that into practice?
Absolutely. I think there are three elements. One is the basically leveraging my skills.
Yeah.
I had an understanding of human-centered design, of psychology. So instead of using those to run a marketing campaign or for innovation purposes, I basically designed a model that was basically 100% the ad hoc for culture design. So I have a framework that's called the Culture Design Canvas. And now we have people, like 100,000 people across the world using it. And even the first people that say you don't know anything about it and they resist it, now they have adopted it. So it's fine.
Right.
What comes around goes around.
Right.
There's the experience. So I say, what are my strengths in terms of experience? And I've been working as a consultant with startups and also a lot of hundreds of Fortune 500 companies in different continents, in different categories. And I say, well, I still have the expertise to talk to the big kahunas, the leaders of the organization. I know
Right.
That business are facing. I know what type of conversation to have. I have the credibility. I have the confidence to have those conversations. And then the third element was to, instead of trying to accommodate and adapt to the context, I say I need to present something different. So, and that's why my thinking was at that point for me a little bit radical. Some resisted it, whatever. And now people say, oh, this guy's having something. So not only I moved from people being skeptical about myself, but now I built a strong reputation that a lot of people are looking into my work and my research and my perspective. And that's why I also wrote a book about it. No, so that would be my advice for people. If you're trying to change the career, not only change it, but also change the career itself. So the field in which you're going to become new to you, well, bring something different to that field. First, because then you're going to find it more interesting and relevant. But also, if not, it's going to be harder. After, in my case, after 30 plus years of career, switching to a new field, I felt that I need to do something dramatically different, not just become another person in the field.
Right. So you wrote a book, you developed the culture design canvas. You gave people a framework. You gave them something to look at and to put their hands around, so that it wasn't just you talking to them and telling them. You had something to show them.
Absolutely. And the model also, I didn't just create a model and that's it. So every day I started doing lots of research, using my model to understand existing company cultures, developing more and more tools for people. 95% of the tools I develop are all free. People can go to my website and download all the templates. I even written all the facilitation guides. So I'm not just giving people I've been giving for the past years a lot of content. So I've written like over 600 articles that are also free access. So some people say, if you want to build a reputation and become well-known in the field, do some stuff. I say, well, I'm not just going to do some stuff. I'm going to become one of the very best in the field. I dedicated over 5 years to do that. I'm going to continue doing that.
Sure. And then when did you develop the speaking? Were you also trying to get yourself into speaking engagements at the same time? Or in other words, because you've developed a lot of content, you've established yourself as a thought leader. And when did the speaking come into play?
That was more organic. I mean, a lot of people reading my work and they say, hey, can you come and talk about psychological safety or how to improve a culture of purpose? And they started inviting me. Also, I do a lot of workshops with different organizations, and sometimes I say, hey, we like what we learned in our team. Would you mind putting that into a shorter form? And you can share that as a talk in front of our senior executives. So that kind of stuff.
Wonderful.
I haven't been promoting myself as a speaker. It's more like an organic ask that many people request, and I do it.
Got it. So this is very helpful. I think the other thing that I'm hearing underneath all the doing of things, right? The production of content and putting things out there and all the work that you probably do in the background and the research and everything. But I think that one of the keys that I'm hearing is being consistent and staying consistent and persistent, I think, in terms of just continuing to move forward. And because it sounds like you also had to face some skepticism, people who maybe knew you and said, hey, what are you doing? What? And yet I'm imagining there were people out there who knew you and trusted you and were willing to listen. And once they listened and they saw what you had developed, they opened their door a little wider to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it in terms of consistency. My advice always when people ask, okay, what was your strategy? What worked, what didn't work? I never fall into the trap of content marketing, like creating something to create leads. Basically, for me, it was more of the long run, like go deep. Anyone can write 1,000 articles. I wrote articles that are 3,000 words, or even longer. So go super deep into a topic. And in the end, I have people reaching out and say, hey, I want you to help us redesign our culture. We're going through a merger. We need to integrate the culture of two companies. I say, well, perfect. How do you find out myself? And some people come and say, hey, I've been reading your work for the past 4 years or 5 years. So there's a lot of people that have been like interactive with my tools, etc., until they find the right moment to say, hey, I need your help.
I see.
That's been really, really good. So basically, all the effort, all that consistency pays off 3, 4, 5 years after I started.
Yeah. So I think the other word that's coming to mind is patience.
Okay, I'm not a patient person. I'm more into the patient side, but I know what you. It's more like a I would say investing in the long run, or that.
Okay. Well, I think that's probably more from the outside looking in. It looks like you're being patient, but I think because you're always learning and developing as you go along, because my sense is that you're also consistently learning. You're not, it's not like you're reinventing the same material over and over. You're continuing to learn as you go along as well. And there's I think you also bring a natural curiosity to what you do. That's where the innovation space comes in as well, I can imagine.
No, definitely. I think the one thing that it's important is this idea of what drives you, And for me, I always, when I'm doing training with different people, I always invite them to empty their cups, because everything that we know, everything that has made us successful quickly becomes a hindrance for us to absorb new content, because every time we hear something that's different, we justify our current beliefs and we resist what's new. So for me, rather than fight back and try to show that, oh, I'm good at whatever, I always say I don't like to consider myself an expert. When people say, you're an expert on this, I say, no, I'm not expert, because an expert feels that you reach the final destination and you're done. I'm more like I like to consider myself, I'm an ignorant on everything. So I'm always trying to do research and always try to keep my mind open to explore new possibilities.
Love that. Love that. And let's talk about your book.
Yep.
Remote, not distant. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. Once again, talking about the evolution of things, I started writing a book on culture design to basically share my framework, my approach. And when I was doing that, we were in the midst of the pandemic. People were forced to work remotely, and there were a lot of things like that starting to be disrupted. And the question that many people were asking was, what's going to happen next? So at some point, we will conquer or maybe put in place this virus. People would be able to go back to their offices, and then, well, what's going to happen? Many people predicted that things would go back to normal. Many people started talking about, well, hybrid might be the new thing. Some people were talking about, no, hybrid is an aberration. It's the worst of both worlds. And I thought, I think the hybrid could be good if you do it right. So I started my research and interviewing people and reviewing data to basically see if hybrid could become the best of both worlds. And yeah, definitely yes. But you need to be very intentional, patient, and consistent to do it.
See, that's where the patience comes in, right? But I think there's another great word in there, intentional. And yet intentional doesn't mean that you're not going to shift gears along the way, right? You can start with an intention to learn new things and say, you started with a hypothesis. Hybrid could be a good thing if it's done right. Well, what does it look like when it's done right? How do you know that? I think people are still now asking those questions. I think people are still struggling with that now. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I was worried that my book might come a little bit late to the game, but people say, no, it's perfect timing. It's only been like 2 months and a half since I launched it, and people still saying, "Oh, it's relevant." So good for that. There are two big issues. One is we tend to think in binary terms. So people think remote and people think in the office. They cannot integrate the idea, what if we have both? So when I talk about the people for example, they can build a strong culture remotely, people say, no, we need the office. And I'm never saying we don't need a physical space. I'm saying be mindful, why and when do you need people to work together?
Right.
There's a lot of collaboration, there's a lot of communication that can happen asynchronously. So at our own time, we don't need to be not even in the same space, but we don't need to be on the same call to interact with people. We can do work. Actually, the best work happen when people can block time, they can go focus, do deep work. That's where magic happens. If we're constantly interrupted, either by Zoom calls, by emails, Slack messages, or by people in the office, whatever the context is, we're not going to do great work. So I think that intentionality is, we were working under certain assumptions that certain models work. There's no research that shows or supports that, for example, water cooler conversations really drove to belonging. There's no research that shows that because people are in the same workspace, they're going to connect and feel like they are part of the same team. Actually, even before the pandemic, Gallup's disengagement scores were close to 70%. So
Yes.
I use the example that you live under the same roof and sleep in the same bed with someone doesn't mean that there's going to be love or passion. That happens that you're there. So the same happens in the workplace. I think that we need to start challenging those ideas. Once we do that and we let go and we empty the cup, then we can start exploring what are the possibilities.
I love that. Oh, I love hearing that. I think that is really that is such a great place for people to begin thinking about what is the value that they can get out of being physically in the same place together. I know there are people who are missing those, relationships around the water cooler or the proverbial water cooler, right? Or passing someone in the hallway in the office and stopping to say a quick hello, and those more informal kinds of interactions. But at the same time, I think you're making an excellent point to empty your cup and then say, okay, what is it that we really need here to be effective as a team, as an organization? And it sounds like you provide a lot of great tools for organizations and leaders to really guide their organizations in the right place. And I can also appreciate what you're saying about the binary thinking. I think we do go too quickly to it's either this or this, and there's nothing in between. And I find that a lot of people, when they either don't know something, it's usually when they don't know something and they get anxious about that. And that's when they go to that either or thinking. And if they could take just even a half a step back and look at what's in between the either and the or, they might see what else is possible, right? I think this is, I think you're going to have a bigger and bigger audience going forward with this. I can only imagine, Gustavo. The conversation has just begun around this, wouldn't you say?
No, absolutely. But once again, I keep looking at the cover of your book, and I think that for me, it's inside out. I really feel driven by this need to help people. So I'm basically my desire, what drives me is to how can I help people have these conversations, and rather to suffer through the process is to actually enjoy it. The 9 to 5 doesn't work anymore. And we are in a unique moment to redefine how we work. So rather than try to rush and say, this is the solution, you asked before, what's the solution? Well, in my book, I share there's no such thing as a silver bullet. Each company has to design their own solution. And I present like a framework with 5 steps for people to do that. There are some people that want to go back to the office. There are people that don't. There are people that want a mix. There's a lot of scenarios based on different types of employees. I mean, the younger people want to have more mentoring. They want to have more in person. The people like me, mid-50s, don't want to go back to the office. The people with kids don't want to go too often to the office. Then the people that are 60 plus, they want to be full-time in the office. So there's a lot of realities, and companies need to provide the freedom and flexibility for people to design what works best for them individually and also for their team, because we're part of a team. So the formula has to do with combining freedom, but also discipline. We need to
but discipline, yeah, absolutely. And yet, I think even the word discipline means different things to different people. I heard a new definition of discipline just in the last couple of days, and it was different than just sort of following a straight and narrow path, but it really evolves more from really self-knowledge and knowing what works for you. And I think that that's what you're speaking to. A lot of our leaders, organizational leaders, I'm not sure if they're accustomed to leading in the way that you're talking about, but it sounds like your 5 steps provide a framework for them to work through that. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think you nailed it when you say discipline is not control, it's not rigidity. It's basically, okay, if each team member has the freedom to choose, for example, their schedule, where they're going to, we need to find some common ground that's going to work for the whole team. If we're going to be working mostly asynchronously, we need to become very good at documenting things so it's easier for people to access that information, to keep everyone on the loop. We need to be more disciplined when it comes to having meetings with people that are joining from the office, people that are joining from other offices, people that are joining from their home or Starbucks or wherever, to make sure everyone feels included and we're not defaulting to this presentism bias and we reward the people that are more visible.
Right. So part of that involves having systems that everybody can access and communicate effectively through.
Yes, systems, but most importantly, we need to have team agreements. The teams need to define how we're gonna, what the discipline look like in our context. What are the practices? That's gonna make all of us work together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, tell our audience what's next. What can they be looking forward to? I mean, your book will be available. Mm-hmm. And your website is full of resources that people can access. We will have all of that in the show notes. What else would you like to make sure our audience knows about before we close out today?
Well, we're just launching a new program based on the book. So a lot of people requested, hey, can you do a workshop? It's actually a 5-session workshop. Ooh. And of course, we're not going to repeat the content that people can read on the book, but basically we're going to help them use the different tools and redesign their culture. So it's going to be a very a focus and deep, in-depth kind of diving into your remote or hybrid culture. So if you are in the moment that you're considering what you need to do, maybe join the program.
That's great. So we'll have information about that in the show notes. Anything that we can provide for people, that would be great. I am just so excited about where your work is headed, where it is now and where it is headed. I think people really, really need your book and your tools because the world is obviously changing by the minute, and they need to know how to navigate that. And I think that you have a lot to offer people in that way. So I want to thank you for being here today and really appreciate your time. This is so exciting.
No, thank you, Tammy, and thank you too for being of service to people. I think that the role that you do, like bringing different voices and helping people stay curious, because that's what the two of us having.
That's right. And absolutely. And clearly you are a shining example of somebody who's working from the inside out. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed the conversation. I'm looking forward to hearing back from your listeners.
Great. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Gustavo Razzetti. It was so interesting to speak with him and learn about his life and current professional endeavors. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygulerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 193. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out. Break through 9 common obstacles and design a career that fulfills you. It's available in print and ebook editions through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, and through your local library. If you were inspired by this episode with Gustavo, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and please do subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd really appreciate a written review by you on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find at my website, tammygulerloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. You can also help me out by supporting the podcast. Buy me a cup of coffee at buymeacupofcoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, I appreciate your help with that. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.